Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our first podcast ever. I'm Mark.
I'm Steven. I think this is going to be rather exciting.
Yeah, it should be a really good time. And we're just here to talk about history of cows.
Are we now?
Yeah, Steven. So this is your topic. So
Right.
take it away.
Well, have you ever heard of a cow named Elm Farm Ollie?
I have never heard of Elm Farm Ollie.
Well, let me tell you the story. Her name wasn't actually Elm Farm Ollie. Her nickname was Nellie J. But I'm guessing Elm Farm Ollie was her registration name.
That would make sense. I know many famous actors that go off of their registration name.
For the sake of the story, we'll use Nellie J. But Nellie J was a famous cow in history. The first flying cow, exactly. In 1930, Nellie J was the first cow to fly on an airplane. I know, fascinating.
That's actually very interesting. Who would have thought?
Yeah, flying cow. Of all the cows wanting to get to the moon, Nellie J came closest.
Did she parachute out?
Well, not exactly, but they milked her on the plane, and then they parachuted her milk out.
Wait, so you're telling me they brought a milking machine onto the plane, or did they hand milk her?
I think they brought a milking machine because...
So they milked her on the plane with a milking machine,
Yes.
and then they put it into buckets,
Cartons.
and then they parachuted these cartons
The little cartons down.
out of the plane.
It was at the Air Exposition, and they parachuted them down. And interestingly enough, Charles Lindbergh drank some of her milk.
Who's that famous female pilot? Did she have some too?
I think she was lost by then.
Probably. That would make sense.
Yeah, so anyway, who would have thought that the first flying cow at an air show...
Is this actually a true story?
Well, it's on Wikipedia, so...
Oh, obviously it must be true.
Obviously true.
Pulled it right from the storybooks of the ancients.
Yeah. So that's one interesting story about a cow.
Do we have any more?
Well, obviously.
Okay, I just thought maybe only one.
Let me go on.
Okay.
All right, well, there was this other story about another famous cow who was framed.
How was she framed?
Well-
Oh, wait a minute. I think I've heard this story before. Is this about the cow that burned down the barn? She's like a barn burner?
Well, she burned down a little more than a barn. She tried a whole city.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah, so the Great Fire of Chicago, they blamed the entire fire on this cow.
What a maddening thing. What do they
Yeah.
call? What do they call? She's an arsonist cow.
Arsonist cows. Yeah, she burned down a whole city. Yeah, it was Mrs. OLeary's cow, and they say that she burned down the entire city by kicking over a lantern.
So
But wasn't exactly the case.
So did Mrs. OLeary get in trouble for this, or did they try to sue the cow or something?
Well, the problem was the cow never actually got to go to trial and get her name cleared, so it was pretty much just always blamed on her.
Right, because cows don't have rights.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So the true story is that Mrs. O'Leary's friend or son's friend was gambling in their barn, and he knocked over the lantern and caused a fire. But they didn't really find that out till years later when he revealed it on his deathbed.
That would make sense, because if I'm in a barn gambling in the 1800s, I'd probably not want anybody to know that, and I would probably blame burning down the whole city of Chicago on a cow too.
I mean, it was just really bad for the cow because it had to live its whole life thinking it had to burn down a whole city.
I don't think the cow actually knew that it burned it down.
Well, I'm pretty sure it felt bad.
Oh, I'm sure it felt bad too. Cows have feelings, of course. They have feelings, just not rights.
Yeah, so anyway, became a very famous cow, Mrs. O'Leary's cow, who burned down the city of Chicago in the Great Fire. Actually, 100,000 people lost their homes because of that fire. But back in those days, that was a large amount of buildings being burned down.
That's still a large amount of buildings being burned down.
Well, there's been worse.
Okay, well, way to be depressing. Do we have any more famous cows?
Yes, of course.
How did this... Welcome back after our commercials. Sorry for that impromptu commercial break. But we're glad you're back. Glad you're joining us.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think we were just talking about how we had more famous cows.
Yeah, so there's a few more.
Yeah. Good deal.
So another famous cow in history was Pauline Wayne, and she was actually the presidential cow.
How do you have a presidential cow? How does that
Apparently,
even work?
back in the day, presidents had their own cows at the White House.
That would make sense because
So-
they needed to have milk to drink too.
Well, they need to mow the lawn somehow, so they
Well-
just naturally had the cow out front grazing.
Yeah, because the front lawn was originally a pasture at some point.
I feel
right?
like they were like greener back in the day. Like just use grazing,
Just use grazing, natural fertilization.
like way ahead of
Way ahead
the
of their
Green New
time.
Deal.
Way ahead of their time.
Who needs the Green New Deal? Just go back in time.
Just pull Pauline Wayne out and have her eat
graze.
the grass.
Yeah. So Howard Taft, or William Howard Taft, he was the 27th president, and he bought this cow, and they just left her grazing on the lawn. But unfortunately, she was actually the last presidential cow.
Why do you think that was?
I think they just started buying their own milk.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. Modernization and all.
They had pasteurization by that time, so they just bought it at the store.
Yeah, they probably didn't want to risk getting diseases, huh?
Probably. But apparently, President Taft said that his wife Helen really wanted the cow because of their growing children. And they wanted to have fresh milk at the White House.
Oh, I thought maybe they just wanted a fun pet. But that would make sense too.
Apparently, they actually believed in milk's bodybuilding abilities. So.
Yeah, milk is pretty good at building bodies.
I mean, when you look at a
Building strong bones.
picture of Mr. Taft, he was pretty good size. I would say he was built on milk.
Wouldn't you say?
Maybe a little more than milk.
Wouldn't you say he was a very portly man? Probably a little more than milk.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, Pauline Wayne replaced their other cow, and their other cow was named Mooly Wooly.
Mooly Wooly.
Yeah.
Do you think she turned into a steak? Or?
Probably. But clever name. I mean, who would have thought Mooly Wooly? They were a little more creative back then.
No insult to Pauline, of course.
Yeah. But so the presidential cow wasn't really the most adventurous presidential pet because some other presidents had weirder pets.
Right. Didn't Andrew Jackson have like a couple fighting roosters or something like that?
How did you know?
I'm really
Well,
good
John
at
Quincy Adams had alligators, so I think he probably wins. But
Yeah.
Benjamin Harrison had possums named Mr. Reciprocity and Mr. Protection.
What?
We won't get into that.
Okay. Do we have any other famous cows?
Well, there's
Or is this where it gets weird?
this is where you could say it gets way cooler.
Oh, that's a good one. Good little segue there.
Yeah, so this next story is about cows in Antarctica.
Did they like bring him over on the boat?
No,
How did they get him there?
they put them on the boat.
That's what I thought.
How else would they get there?
How else would they get there? Maybe they could airdrop them, or
So in
I don't know.
1933, 3 prize-winning cows went to Antarctica. Apparently, the 1930s was like a big time for cow exploration because that's when the first flying cow happened too.
it was a big time for all explorations. I think.
I think they
because-
were very focused on putting cows in interesting places.
Well, I mean, that was just before World War One, right? So they're just trying to gear up and get ready to
Get all this done before the war.
Yeah, make sure they have cows in cool places before Hitler, right?
Yeah. That was the plan.
Defeat him with cows.
Yeah, so anyway, they wanted to bring some cows to Antarctica, so they thought, hey, why not bring some 3 prize-winning cows to Antarctica? And so they brought Guernseys there.
Well, that was a poor choice.
Yeah, I don't know, like, when you think of, like, bring a hardy cow to Antarctica, like, Guernseys aren't usually the first breed I would think of.
Probably not. Guernseys are known to be more of a. They don't like to use the word frail, but I do. They're more of a frail breed.
The wheelchair breed.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Let's be honest. The wheelchair breed. Yeah. Their skeletal structure doesn't hold together as well as any of the other breeds, like a Holstein or a Brown Swiss. Even is a lot more hardier than a Guernsey.
Well, these ones were pretty hardy, I guess, because they went to Antarctica. So
did they make it back?
I hope so.
Well, we don't know that. So
I think they came back.
They made it there, or was it just an elaborate butchering process? Keep them cool.
No, actually, they did make it there, and actually, one of the Guernseys actually calved and had a calf there.
What did they name it?
Klondike.
What would you do for a Klondike? Would you venture to Antarctica to find a Klondike bar? Probably not.
Yeah, actually, that was interesting name, but that was also the first cow to have a calf that far south. So
is that where they
most
came
southern latitude?
Is that where they came up with the name for the Klondike bar?
Pretty sure it was already invented.
Are you sure? When was the Klondike bar invented? We gotta look this up. We'll look that up later.
You do that in your own time.
Yeah. We're not here to look up Klondike bars. We're talking about cows.
So, when they were in Antarctica, they built an ice block barn, and they called it the Eskimo barn.
The Eskimo barn?
Yeah. But the problem was that they had to walk 3 miles in the snow to get to the Eskimo barn that they built for them in Antarctica.
Isn't Antarctica like covered in snow? So why did they
snow and ice?
Why did they build the Eskimo barn that far away from where the cows were being housed?
They wanted to herd them 3 miles. I don't know. Like they wanted exercise after the long voyage. Like I have no idea.
That just seems really unreasonable to me. I feel like that was their own problem. They caused it.
Well, that's where the story kind of gets a little bit more sad. One of them actually died.
Oh, well, that is really sad.
So,
well, it's probably due to it being a Guernsey.
Yeah, very fragile, but it got frostbite and then had to be put down. And one of the herdsmen quoted in his book that, "I've had to put away a lot of them, Admiral, but it's never got to me before, but I guess I got pretty fond of that cow."
I mean, I guess if you come over with it on the boat and you're like in that close of quarters with it for that long, you just form a bond.
A cool bond.
A cool bond. A really cool bond. I would almost say an ice cool bond.
Yeah, so anyways, while they were on the voyage, they actually got to use portable milking units that were powered by a wind generator that produced electricity. And the cows actually provided milk for the research team while they did their research there.
Oh, so they were useful and they did research on the cows. Or they were doing other research.
They were doing other research.
The cows were just along for the ride.
Well, they were making milk for the team.
Oh. So they actually served a purpose instead of...
Yeah, I think they were actually sponsored by the Milking Machine Company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they had advertisements about that, about the milking machines, about how they went and used them in Antarctica.
Oh, for Guernseys?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, interesting sideline, but one of the Guernseys was owned by Mr. J.C. Penney.
Why would he send his cow to Antarctica?
You know, retail store owners.
They're always trying to get the best scoop on the next clothing line.
Maybe he thought he could like use it in an advertisement. Be
Maybe.
as cool as my cow. Buy this shirt.
Be as cool as my cow.
Yeah. Apparently, like one of the cow that he gave to them was sired by a bull that he paid like $20,000 for in 1920.
That's a lot of money for a cow.
Yeah, back in
1920.
Yeah, like that was.
That's a lot of money for a cow now.
It's like $250,000 in today's money.
Yeah, that's an insane amount.
So, I guess he was pretty committed to the voyage.
Committed to the voyage. Pretty committed to the cause. That's for sure.
Yeah. So they brought enough feed for the 11,000-mile journey and a 2-year supply of straw and sand for bedding.
2-year supply of straw and sand?
You don't want to run out.
That didn't sink the boat.
There was only 3 cows.
Oh, true. True. I guess I'm thinking of cows in the larger sense, as in like a big herd.
Yeah.
3 cows don't require that much sand. But they do require a lot of hay still.
Well, that's true. But yeah, so anyway, that was the story about cows being milked the farthest south, traveling the farthest south, and having a calf the farthest south. So they were shattering records.
Record-shattering Guernseys.
Yes.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, so...
I definitely would have never guessed that a Guernsey would be that explorative. Is that the word?
Much of explorers, yeah. I
Yeah,
guess.
much of explorers. There we go.
Yeah, adventurers.
Yeah, that's the right word that I'm looking for.
Yeah, so 3 Guernseys went there, and 3 of them came back because of the baby calf.
Oh, that's right.
One didn't make it.
So they made a pretty
But they had
equal return.
They had like a hero's return, and became like a pretty big news story back in those days. And they actually made a medallion in the honor of the first calf born in Antarctica.
Did they give the heroic return thing for the researchers, or was it?
No, just for the cows.
Are you sure?
They were for the cows.
Somehow I think it was for the researchers, and then the cows were just like a side note, like, hey, yeah, we're back from Antarctica, and we found all this cool stuff. It's just like all ice and snow there, but also we brought our cows.
Well, they say the one Guernsey actually grew like a really shaggy haircoat while they were down in Antarctica because it was so cold.
So almost like a northern Highland cow?
Yeah, and they say she never lost all that hair.
Really?
Weird, I know.
Interesting.
Poor cow. Hope it didn't have to go like back home to Missouri or something.
Go back to the heat and humidity. Oh, man.
That would be rough. But yeah, so that's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, those are some pretty interesting stories.
Yeah, who knew cows would be so adventurous and like do so many cool things?
Yeah, honestly. I would have never thought that a cow would be flying through the air and getting milked and dropping little milk cartons with
Or like
parachutes.
eating grass on the front lawn of the White House.
Or eating snow in Antarctica. What do they eat in Antarctica? Oh, yeah, the hay that they brought along.
Yeah, they brought food.
That's right. So, anyways, I'm glad you guys all joined us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And we'll see you next time.
All right, sounds good.
All right, later.
Peace.